It's time to talk about the New York Knicks. Is Jalen Brunson overrated? What do we do with Julius Randle? Is it time for an Immanuel Quickley breakout? It's all coming up in this episode. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. We're here to talk New York Knicks. I think it's an interesting show. I hope it's an interesting show. We've got a lot to talk about with some valuations on these players. Before we get into that, though, just a quick update on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Bold Warnie.
Let's get it on, Gilly.
Oh, God, the voice is really struggling at the moment. Maybe I'm just getting old, like those singers who can't hit the high notes anymore. I can't hit the high laugh anymore. I had some feedback. Someone said, hey, Josh, you said that maybe some of the entries were dropping for the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, which they were for the last 2-3 shows. It's like a quarter of the entries, which is, I didn't know what was going on. And he said, I just think that the entry form process was too long. And people had entered other ones, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to enter that anymore. Feedback taken on board. The Knicks entry form and all ones from here on out will just be simple. One question. That is it. And if you have entered previous ones and you didn't get in, I have sent all the invites out for all of the shows, Atlanta up until Golden State. The first 10 shows, invites have been sent out. Probably get another 5 of those sent out today. But if you missed out on those, I will put you back into some of the mix for some of these other ones. So don't fear that time that you spent on those, you will get chucked back into the mix here for the entry on it. And the entry form is just going to be easy. So if you want in a category league or a points league, don't have to sit through. I thought it would be honestly, I thought it would be something fun. But the feedback that was, hey man, these questions are too hard. I don't need to do this much work to get in. Taken on board completely. Let's just do the one little question that I will reveal later on in the show that we need to talk about for the Knicks. So let's talk about the Knicks now in general and go in and have a look at how things look for New York with their schedule. They have 46 quality games coming up for this season, which is an intermediate number. The lowest is 39, the most is 55. So they're in the middle there. Most teams are around this zone, so there's nothing sort of mind-blowing, earth-shattering or anything with that number. They do have 13 back-to-backs, the lowest in the league. It doesn't really matter for this team. There's no one who is considered an everyday risk threat. Back-to-backs are always going to be a problem as players return from injuries, but hopefully they don't. They also have 12 maximum game weeks, which some people said, well, if you've got the lowest amount of maximum game weeks, doesn't that mean you have a low amount of minimum game weeks? And it doesn't really necessarily work that way. What it usually means is that max game weeks are usually 4, because there's only one 5-game week in the entire NBA, and that is, I think it's Brooklyn in the fantasy playoffs. But if you've got your fewer 4-game weeks, it means you've probably got more 3-game weeks, whereas some of the teams that have more 4-game weeks have probably got a few extra 2-game weeks. All right, that's sort of how we look. I'm looking at it anyway. Playoffs for the Knicks, it's not great. 3-3-4 for Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, 24th of March finish. That's not ideal. 3-4-3 for the 31st of March. 4-3-4 for the 7th of April. And 3-4-4 for the final week of this season. So they don't have max playoff games for any of those 4 different playoff schedules. Again, none of these things here, I think, make you want to downgrade Knicks players or boost them up your ranking boards because of how their schedule looks. I don't think that is how we want to view that. Let's have a look at some pressure points. This is a very interesting roster because the roster suggests we have to play small. The coach suggests we don't. So which one it is? Which one it is? Which one is it? That's better English. Do they play any small ball? Because if they do, that helps Quickley, Grimes, Hart, Barrett, someone else I'm missing, DiVincenzo. It means we get a little bit of Randle at the 5, maybe. Now, they're almost going to be forced to play small as a general rule because they don't have any backup power forwards. They just don't. But how small do they actually go? Do they ever play Randle at center? Or is Thibodeau going to be like, I want a center? And by center, he means Robinson, Hartenstein, or Sims on the court for every second of the game. And the going small is going to be when I have to play Josh Hart and RJ Barrett as my power forward. But how does he lean into that is really curious. There are too many guards/wings on this team. I just reel them off. We know Brunson's going to do what he does. He's going to start. He's going to play big minutes. But then there's Grimes. There's Barrett, who's probably a wing more than a guard, but he's there. There's Hart, who's probably more of a forward, but he's more of a 3 than a 4, so he's in that mix. There's Quickley, who we know was great and second in Sixth Man of the Year. There's the addition of Dante DiVincenzo. There's Juice McBride, who's shown some things. And bloody Evan Fournier, the diseased scrotum. He's still on this team. And he's not going to play. But there's too many of these guys. And there's going to be something that breaks at some point, I think. I don't know what it is. But there's going to be something that breaks. And I think it could be RJ Barrett. But I don't know. Because I don't know what the Leon Rose faith is. How much does that trickle down to old mate Thomas Thibodeau? Because we did see that when Hart came across that Barrett, instead of being a 35, 36-minute player, would go to 30, 31. He wouldn't play fourth quarters. He struggled early in the playoffs, had some pretty good games towards the end. I don't think that changes anything, but what is their faith level in him? Because again, all of these players, Grimes, Hart, Quickley, DiVincenzo, Barrett, they can't all play 30 minutes. It's impossible for them to do it. Somebody has to miss out. It should be RJ, I think. But that's going to depend on what Tom and the front office think of Barrett and how much faith they still have left in him to be able to get those minutes, which are going to be, they're going to provide enough value for you to consider him in, certain formats. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. You might be at home and you think, I'm going to order dinner. And you've done that with DoorDash plenty of times. And they deliver that restaurant meals to your door. Fantastic. We love it. But what if you're in there, you got your apron on, you're mixing stuff up, you got a beautiful little stir fry going, maybe it's a pad thai that you got cracking, and you realize I'm out of peanuts. Where's my garnish? Well, DoorDash does groceries. They've got thousands of grocery stores, and they've got all the best ones in your local communities. Choose the one you want. Help support that local community. The DoorDash, people go in, they pick what you want, just like you're picking it yourself. There's substitution options in the app as well, and it helps you save money too, because if you've got the Dash Pass membership, you get a $0 delivery fee on eligible orders as well. We've got an offer to get you 50% off your first DoorDash order, which is up to $20 in value when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. That's 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget that code is LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Let's talk breakout candidates on the Knicks. And you, by now, I think, welcome if it's the first show, by now you know what I mean by a breakout candidate. I mean someone who's got a real chance to exceed projections. And I do have 2 players on here, which you might think that that's impossible. But let me explain it.
This briefcase and this haircut.
Quentin Grimes. He, I thought, was pretty good as a rookie. He was slated, I thought, to be the starter last season, came into training camp injured, didn't get the spot, obviously. And then as soon as he was healthy, he was in there and he was playing. I think that he is the best defender out of the group of Barrett, Brunson, Grimes, Hart, maybe, Quickley, DiVincenzo. He is a guy that has shown an ability to ramp up. And what do I mean by that? Well, if they need, he can become a usage player. He can become a primary initiator. If they don't, he can hit threes and he can be a defender. And he's bloody good at all of that stuff. It's year 3. Lots of players step up. Now, it is hard. I'm going to bang on and bang on. If there's one takeaway from this show, it's the Knicks have a bloody lot of guards. But that doesn't always have to be the case. Grimes could come out and just be that good, where, we've seen it already with guys that the Knicks sign, like Fournier, they look, well, this actually isn't working. We're just not going to play you. And maybe that happens with DiVincenzo. Maybe they say, well, we're not willing to pay Immanuel Quickley. Let's trade him and get something back. Grimes is actually this good. Let's move on from Barrett. And Grimes plays 35 a night. Because theoretically, he should be someone that Tibbs loves. He can handle the ball. He sacrifices for the team. He can shoot. And he bloody defends super hard. I don't foresee it. Like, my projections don't tell me there's a top 100 guy here in Grimes. They do for long term. But I'd be interested in having a look at him in the last picks of a draft. Now, I'll say the same for Josh the Hitman Hart, who has limitations, right? He's a low usage player whose three-point shooting is going to wildly vary. I think he shot, 42% in the time coming over for the Knicks in the regular season and then 27% in the playoffs. In general, he's a bad shooter. But he's going to be playing, I believe, a lot of power forward. And that should be able to increase, A, his field goal percentage, but B, his rebounds and maybe even his blocks. And if they believe that he is a winning player, and they should because he is, and they, again, jettison some of those other rotation guys, Barrett or DiVincenzo or Quickley or whatever it is, he might be able to get 35 a night coming off the bench as a 3, as a 4, and maybe a top 100 guy. So there's just a lot of these players, which I'd be happy to take later rounds. But these are two guys that, when I look at the coach and look at what he enjoys and the way that he likes the game played, that Grimes and Hart have that ability. Grimes, natural evolution, growth as a player. Hart, full season there, opened up role at power forward as well. Let's take one of those guards under the lens. It's Immanuel Quickley. Last season, Quickley was a surprise, I would say.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
He ended up playing 29 minutes a night despite coming off the bench. He averaged 15 points with 2 threes, 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists and a steal. He shot 45 from the field, 82 from the line on 3 attempts per game. He finished runner-up in Sixth Man of the Year, 21% usage. And as the season went on, he just kept getting better and better and better. He improved defensively. And this was the season before when I did my season reviews on the Knicks. I said, Quickley's got this amazing on-off number, amazing advanced numbers. Let's give him an opportunity to start. And then when they signed Bronson, I was a little bit pissed. Because I just want to see Quickley get an opportunity. And I was frustrated with that. And we still didn't get to see that full upside opportunity here from Quicko. And I still don't know that we will. So he was quite good. 116th in points per game value, 112th in ESPN, Yahoo points, 116th in Yahoo, 112th in ESPN. -1 category rank, though, 132nd. That's not super strong. But we have this idea of Quickley putting up these huge numbers and being great all season, and he really wasn't. Like, he was good. And as you're going to see with a lot of these graphs, there's big improvements as the season goes on when Thibodeau made that change and cut Derrick Rose out and cut Fournier out and went with this 9-man rotation. But he really struggled in the playoffs. He is coming up to be a restricted free agent. They did bring another guard in Dante DiVincenzo, and I'm a little worried about where we go with Quickley. To me, he's moving into the Cole Anthony, Kobe White, man, just get a starting spot and you'll blow up. Now, I think he's better than both White and Anthony pretty comfortably. And I did not like him as a draft prospect at all. I was so down on him, and he's won me over. But there are some situations where maybe he gets a little overrated. Like, he's a point guard who played 29 minutes a night and averaged 3 assists a game. And yes, he was a bench guy, but he played 29 minutes a night. Like, that's close enough. He should be doing more than that. But as you can see on the graph there, the assists, there's one big spike week in the middle where he got 30 assists in a week 11. And they just kept going up, 14, 15 a week, 17, 22, like some okay numbers. That's all right. Part of the issue with him, and this is part of the problem again when we look at season-long averages, and so many fantasy ranks are actually tailored to the game that, I'm not going to say nobody plays, but is a vast minority of people that play, like 5-6% of people, and that's rotisserie leagues. And that's where averages make more sense. That's where those rankings make more sense. Because the variance of a week-to-week situation is cancelled out. It doesn't matter. But if you look at Quickley here in his shooting numbers, they are all over the shop. There's a week where he shot 62%. And then there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks out of 24 where he shot under 40% from the field. Then there's weeks where it's 47, 50. Like, it's just all over the place. It did trend up as the season went on, but that's really hard. Now, you could just say you punt field goals with him, and I get that. But that also ties into scoring. The fewer shots you hit, which impacts your field goal percentage, the fewer points you score. And that's just a lot of week-to-week inconsistencies. So we look at his numbers and say he's 131st in -1 or whatever. But what player are you getting each week? That was hard to know. The minutes, they trended up as the season went on. And as you saw, as I mentioned earlier, he barely played early on because they went with this weird lineup where Rose and Fournier were playing, and he was never getting 100 minutes a week. And then it did jump up as the season went on into a larger role. But my concern is going to be, how does he play? How does he play enough this season? Brunson is going to get his 36 minutes. Quickley is going to get those 12 minutes backing him up. But how does he get the other 16? Because Hart, Grimes, Barrett, DiVincenzo all need minutes. You've got to play the 240-minute game with the Knicks. They're going to run only 9 men in the rotation. They're going to play Hartenstein and Robinson all 48 minutes at center. So you've got 192 minutes to go between 4 on-court spots, and 72 of those 192 minutes minimum, 72? Yeah, 72. That's 36 to Randle and Brunson are going to be out. So you're going to have 120 minutes to play between 5 players, which is 20 minutes a player. And that's Barrett, Grimes, Quickley, Hart, and DiVincenzo on a nightly basis. That's all you're going to get. So who misses out? Because DiVincenzo comes in and replaces Obi Toppin's 12 minutes a night. And unless you think he's playing 12 minutes a night, which I don't think he is, he could, but I don't think he is, somebody is losing out here. And I worry that it's going to be Quick here. I worry that there's a risk of that. Because he just probably doesn't need to be used as much as a shooting guard player. I don't know. He could also just come in and completely blow up in year 4. But the minutes are a very big squeeze. I don't know how they're going to work out. His -1 rank, I said there were some issues and some flubs, but it improved as the season went on. He had some monster weeks at the end. That's where all the 6th Man of the Year buzz came. But look at that. There was a stretch there where he was not top 100 for 5 weeks in a row. And then he had these really big weeks at 30, at 50. It's really, really strong performances towards the end of the season. But it didn't carry over into the playoffs. And again, it is just very hard how he gets the minutes on this team. His Darko DPM change graph continuing to improve. He's only 24. He hasn't hit his peak. He will, I believe, not... I don't think he'll be on this Knicks team in a year and a half. I think he'll be playing somewhere else. He'll be a starting point guard. The Spurs should go after him immediately. Don't know if they will, but they should. And when he plays 35 minutes a night, he'll be a consistent top 70 fantasy player, I think. He's got really good numbers in that regard. And he continues to improve. But it's a lot of just faith drafting at the moment. Like, I guess we get more minutes, but how the hell you get there, I don't know. That is the tough part. I hope I worked all those calculations out before with the numbers off the top of my head. I think I did. Let's have a look at this headshot plot from Basketball Index. I've got a lot of the Knicks guys on here. There is, I've got his sixth man competitor, Malcolm Brogdon. There's Quickley. There's DiVincenzo. There's Grimes. There's Cole Anthony, who I compared him to. And there's RJ Barrett in there as well. I've got 2 things. On-ball percentage. So how much do you have the ball in your hands? And how good of a three-point shooter you are, three-point shooting talent percentile. And you'll see that Brogdon, Quickley, DiVincenzo are all pushed towards the same area in terms of how good three-point shooters they are. Cole Anthony a little bit behind. RJ Barrett significantly worse. These guys are all in the 85th to 90th percentile. The other guys, Barrett in the 20s. Like, he's a terrible three-point shooter. Cole Anthony around the 80th mark as well. And Quentin Grimes, like 85th percentile. They're all good shooters. The difference, again, that we have here is how much time do they spend on ball. And Barrett's sitting there at about 70-ish percent, 68% around that mark in terms of percentile, sorry. But and Grimes way down at about like 15th percentile, just doesn't spend any time on ball, which is fine. But the problem I have here is that like both Quickley and DiVincenzo are in the same sort of area with Cole Anthony and with Malcolm Brogdon. And now they're on the court together, and now they're on the same team together, and they're going to be sharing a lot of minutes. Not to say that Quickley has to lose out to DiVincenzo, but somebody does. Something has to give here. Quickley and DiVincenzo can't have the ball in their hands that much because they're going to play together. It's going to require some interesting rotation changes from Thibodeau. And someone is going to suffer significant drops that we don't really see coming. And I just will always preach that level of caution. Now, if you're drafting Quickley at 120, who cares, right? It might not work out, you move on. But there are risks. I say this knowing there's a risk of laughter, but I still think Isaiah Hartenstein's ranked in the wrong spot. Now, let me get this very clear. Instead of laughing at this number or laughing at this player on the screen, do not draft Isaiah Hartenstein in a 10-team league, in a 12-team league, or maybe even a 14-team league. Don't do it. 14, I maybe could say it. But he's ranked just way too low. He's in a situation where he's ranked where he would barely be a 20-team league player. 242nd on Yahoo. Fantrax ADP of 319. ESPN ranked 241, 244. Like, those numbers just aren't really based in any level of reality. Like, he was top 200 in ESPN points last season. He was top 200 in Yahoo points last season, Hartenstein. He was 176th in -1 head-to-head ranks last season for category leagues. Again, not saying to draft him. He really struggled with the shooting and the fact that Tom Thibodeau refuses to let centers do anything, and that'll still be the same thing. But I'm just talking deeper leagues. Like, this puts him completely out of consideration for any scenario. And mainly I wanted to highlight him because I don't see anyone else who looks like a real sleeper on this team. He's the only one who I thought, well, there's 60 spots of value perhaps, depending on how these ranks play out. So, yeah, just be aware of that for deeper leagues. It's probably all we need to get into with him. Now, quick question for the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. Immanuel Quickley. What college did he go to? The answer is Kentucky. That's your answer. Just answer Kentucky on the entry form. Kentucky. Don't write Wildcats. Don't write UK. Don't write University of Kentucky. Just write Kentucky. Although I will go in and fix him if you don't. But it's Kentucky. That's where he went. We're doing Immanuel Quickley. Let's look at a fantasy bust. It is, of course, old mate, the double royal, Julius Randle. And before you say anything, Josh, he was an all-star again. He led this team in the regular season. They were great. They won in the playoffs. Despite him, he was terrible. Part of that was his injured ankle. Yeah. It's just all really very relative with Randle. He's ranked 55th on Yahoo. And in a points league, that's unbelievably good value. It might be 20 spots of value. On ESPN, his ADP sits at 42, which on a points league, I love it. Fantastic. Let's go higher. Much higher. Like, well, maybe for ESPN, we don't go quite that high. But he's like a second round points league player on Yahoo. But in category leagues, it's very different. And that's the problem with this. He's ranked 55 on Yahoo. I think it's too high for category leagues. It's not ridiculously high, but I do think it's too high because his -1 rank puts him in a similar sort of spot to that. It's not too far away, but that is a -1 situation. The Durant ranking system puts him again in a similar spot. My problem ends up being like that at 40 on ESPN, or a rank of 47, or an ADP of 52. You've got to be really set and understand that his volume from the field and from the line and his absolute absence of steals and blocks really hurts you. Big points, rebounds, and assists guy. Hits threes. Is wildly inconsistent, it seems, year on year. And I think we might see Brunson just snag a little bit of usage off him. Although, down the second half of last season, Randle's usage went up. Didn't disappear, went up, despite Brunson playing so well. But there just are a lot of risks here with taking Randle in round 5 or round 4, depending on that ESPN number, in a category league. And I just think that that's not going to lead to good things. Points leagues, great. Category leagues, no thanks. He had ankle surgery in the offseason. We saw how bad that was for him in the playoffs. He should be fine, ready to go. But we just hope that there's no lingering concerns there. Who's a player that could be traded? I do think that RJ Barrett or Immanuel Quickley are at significant risk of being moved on. I just don't think that having Barrett and Randle together doesn't make sense. Barrett and Hart together doesn't make sense. Quickly, if you're going to limit his time on ball, doesn't make sense. Like, there's just things that you could do that you could probably get something and cash in for, and you want to get some extra forwards onto this team. Because, again, you're playing guards, DiVincenzo and Hart, and even Barrett, up at power forward. When at best, like, Josh is not a shooting guard, he's a small forward, but getting some of these players to play a little bit out of position. I just wouldn't be surprised if there is a trade swung. Maybe it's Barrett, maybe it's Quickley, of someone to get moved on this squad. Actually, we'll do it now. Let's have a chat about Rowan Barrett, because much like Randle, the value of him depends exactly on where you're playing in what sort of league. He was top 100 in Yahoo points leagues last season. I think he probably drops a little bit from that because I just don't see him playing as many minutes. But in category leagues, no matter how you swing it, it's really hard to look at him as anything close to a top 100 player or really even a draftable guy. -1 had him 196th. There's just too many deficiencies in his game. Like, he just is too bad in too many areas. And with the lack of minutes, or the reduction in minutes that comes, it's tough. Now, if you want someone who can score a little bit, that might mean that you grab him late, and that's okay. And that's why, it's hard to label him completely a bust, because his draft slot is he's ranked 173 on ESPN. That's great. He's 139 on Yahoo. He's got a Fantrax ADP of 139. These are last round flyers just to get some scoring onto your team. Totally okay. And in points leagues, they're actually a little bit of value. But I don't really know, how does he make sense on this team? I don't get it. Let's look at contract years. Both of the Isaiahs, Hartenstein and Roby, yes, Isaiah Roby plays for this team, are unrestricted. Daquan Jeffries, he also plays for this team. He's unrestricted. And then there's Quickley and Juice McBride, who are restricted free agents for the upcoming season.
I am going to drop a deuce on everybody.
We have seen Isaiah Roby in San Antonio, but more so in Oklahoma City, that when he plays, there is fantasy value. Can block shots, can hit threes, can rebound, can score a little. Not bad percentages. And as I will bang on, multiple things on this show. There's a lot of guards, and there are no forwards. Behind Julius Randle is Isaiah Roby. If you want to look at traditional power forward types. Again, Hart and Barrett will play a lot there in that small lineup. But if they get to a situation where Randle does get hurt, are they going to start Josh Hart at the 4 or Barrett at the 4? And even if they do, this man might have to play. I'm not saying we draft him because we don't, obviously, but he is on this team, and they don't have another power forward at all. And we saw at times down the stretch of seasons when Randle would get hurt or sit out games and Obi Toppin would step in. It'd be a very good fantasy option. That's Roby. That's who he is. That is something to watch. What are the rotation risks here? Well, to me, it's just all about what they do with the guards. As I said, how do we get those minutes to those 5 players? I don't know. And if they don't want to run Hart or Barrett many minutes at the 4, is Randle going to have to play 40 a night? He might, because there is no power forwards on this team. If Tibbs wants a bigger guy at that spot, Randle is going to play a ton. And if he does, again, that then pushes more of that risk of the minutes dropping for Dante or Hart or Quickley or Grimes or any of those guys, or Barrett. That is a real risk. Thibodeau loves bigness. So if he needs bigness at the 4, Randle might have to bump up, and that's going to crash around other players. 3 guys that if they're forced into larger roles will be easy standard league players. Quickley, DiVincenzo, and Hartenstein. It's not going to happen for them, but if they do, they do. As for Quickley, I went on about him before, but I didn't really talk about his draft rank or anything like that. He's ranked 105 on ESPN, 130 ADP on Yahoo. That's totally reasonable. Like, you grab him in those last rounds. I do think we have to be really cautious about expecting a big breakout, given the way that the team shapes up. Let's talk about the burner, Jalen Brunson, as we go to their depth chart. He's going to start at point guard. Brunson was obviously fantastic, and I didn't think he'd be anywhere near that good. I think maybe we overrate a little bit what he did last season. He averaged 24 points in 35 minutes, 6 rebounds. Part of the problem with him is the lack of defensive stats, 0.9 steals, 0.2 blocks. And he got there by shooting just unfathomably high 3-point numbers, like 46% over the final 30-odd games, I believe it was. Ended up shooting 42% from 3, and he's just never been that guy at that level. And even if he remains a 40% 3-point shooter, it's a significant drop still. I think that this might be the year that he plays more than Randle and gets more usage than Randle. But I also think we're at a situation with Brunson that he might be getting a little bit pushed up. There's an ADP of 35 on Yahoo, a rank of 36, and a rank of 28 on ESPN with an ADP of 29. That is pushing into bust territory for category leagues. For points leagues, reasonable. Second rounder, maybe early third in points leagues on Yahoo and ESPN. No problem with that. Absolutely take him there. The Durant metric drops him down quite a bit, actually, in category leagues. -1 stuff puts him around 50th, 45th. I think he might be just pushing a little high, because I look at what he did, and what is the scope to get significantly better than that from last season versus what is the risk of that 3-point percentage dropping off? And I'm a little worried that maybe he's going a bit high. Backing up him in the guard spot, it is, and I've talked about this a million times, Quickley, McBride, and Fournier. In terms of the wings, I think it's going to be Grimes and Barrett. Again, I don't mind taking Grimes with the last pick, but it is hard. It is hard to see how the minutes all come. And then for the forwards, Julius Randle as a forward, I don't really consider him a big because he'll never play center. Josh Hart as a forward, backing him up, and Dylan Windler. Again, Hart's in that mix. Take him with one of the last picks, but how do the minutes all come together? And then bigs. We haven't spoken about Mitch Robinson, but we'll do it now.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
If you didn't get any blocks early in the draft, Mitchie can do it for you. He's not a huge block guy anymore because he's trying to stay on the court a little bit more, but he's also not a big minutes player. What he's going to be is someone that gets high field goal percentage, good rebounds, solid blocks, but bad free throws, no assists, no threes, very low usage, very low scoring. And that has limitations. It has value for certain teams, but it has significant limitations as well. And when you're looking towards the end of a draft, that's where Robinson comes in. But his ADP is at 83 on Yahoo. I don't get that at all. I also don't get him at 133 on ESPN. So he's somewhere in the middle. He should be around that 100 mark where the Durans and Williams and those guys are coming off. But they've got more upside, I think, than Mitchie Robinson. In a points league, I don't think he's draftable in the top 10 rounds. He's just not particularly strong. He's like a guy that you look at, maybe he might be 115th, 120th best points league player, but very little upside to beat that. So again, if you want to center late, you do it in a points league, but I'm not super interested. And then backing him up is Hartenstein, who we keep an eye on. Jericho Sims is a good blocks guy if someone gets hurt. There's Roby in there, and then there is old mate Nathan Knight. If we have a look at Durant and Bazemore, said Randall gets a bit of a boost in Durant. Quickly actually drops off somewhat. I love him. I'm worried about how it all squishes in. And Jalen Brunson loses quite a bit there on Durant as well. Whereas for Bazemore, the dynasty metric, it's got Grimes and Quickly both inside the top 100. It's got Brunson inside the top 50, but probably not as high as you'd expect him to be, given that my current version of Bazemore, which when it does get released, you'll be able to tailor it to whatever, it's based on the Durant metric. So, of course, Brunson's probably a little bit lower. And that'll do it for me today. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.
This briefcase and this haircut